Welcome, everybody, to the Hot Tag Hooligans Wrestling Podcast Show with myself, Aaron, and Tom. Tonight, we have a very special guest. Right before his big battle at Invictus Overdrive on November 20th, we have the one and only social media champ himself, Big Game Leroy. How's it going?
Hey, it's so good to be here. So good to be the big game. So good to be the big champ heading into the Invictus Overdrive show. I got a big title defense. I'm excited. I'm pumped. I'm ready to play. Let's do this.
All right, well, let's start right there with that title defense because it is a triple threat match with Mr. Graham and Pancakes. Now,
yes.
Talk to us a little bit about each of those and what perhaps problems they could bring to you during this matchup.
Well, you see, in the first case of Pancakes, somebody I know very, very well. I actually consider him a dear friend of mine. We travel in a lot of the same circles. I was actually there at his very first match, his debut. I was actually the person who, when he took his very first promo picture, I was behind the camera person telling him, hey, do this pose. Hey, try this. Hey, maybe anger yourself that way. So I look at myself as somebody who is not just a friend, but like a little bit of a helper, mentor. I don't know what the proper word would be, but I've been supporting Pancakes since day one. And now he wants to come up here very, very, very confident, very pumping out his chest going, yeah, I'm going to take his title. It's a very nice title, very shiny. And I'm just like, dude, slow your roll. We're friends, but when it comes to my title, it's not going anywhere. That's what the game changer is all about. And when it comes to Mr. Graham, he's a big, strong boy. He essentially a bounty hunter, really. You know, he likes to try to put people into into freaking body bags, and he likes to throw body shots with the best of them. He loves to make sure, and he's told me this. He's expressed this directly. He says he loves to inflict pain on others. He wants to make sure there's red marks left on you after a match of his. He wants to make sure you're hurting and you know that you're in a matchup with Mr. Grimm. I mean, you know, you'd argue that maybe things are looking grim for me, but I don't look at it that way. I look at a triple threat matchup as a fresh new opportunity to prove myself. Two really dope competitors, like two guys of the East Coast scene who I think are really, really talented, who, you know, I appreciate both of their work. And I think they're both amazing competitors, but it really doesn't matter. You know, Mr. Grimm, he can move with the greatest of ease, and he's a huge powerhouse and a heavy hitter, but I'm not too concerned about that. Pancakes is an amazing technical wrestler who's trained at the likes of Jonathan Gresham, Cheeseburger, you name it. He's grappled with them, but I'm not worried about that either. So I got a lot of different stuff going on, but I'm the game changer. Big Game Leroy, master of multitasking, the semi-famous switch wrestler. You know, I bring my own little flair to the matchup that we're in. So, you know, some might say I'm not ready for them, but I'd argue they ain't ready for me.
I tell you, you know, you sold me on this matchup, you know, right then and there. I love triple threat matches. I don't know what it is, but I just love the chemistry and the way that people have to adjust to different styles, because a lot of triple threat matches are three different styles in the matchups. And so, but how do you mentally prepare for a matchup like that? You know, whenever you're going through, you know, is triple threat something that you're kind of used to, or is this kind of new to you?
I've been in a few triple threat matchups before in my career, you know, a handful. I've been in scramble matches. I've been in four ways. I've been in a lot of multi-man matches. So it's not particularly new to me, but I do always understand that every triple threat can be very different. And it's not lost on me that I could lose my title without even being involved in the decision, you know? So I got to keep my head on a swivel. I got to be fast. I got to be quick. I got to make sure that I'm keeping the center of the ring at all times, making sure that I'm involved in the action for better or worse. It's a whole new wrinkle, you know. One-on-one match, you know, I can kind of maintain the pace. I can kind of control everything. I have a lot more control of the tempo of the match versus a triple threat where it's like I have a lot less control, and it's a lot more of a roller coaster ride, so to speak. And you know, for the crowd, it's a lot of fun. For me, a lot less fun, a lot less control. But you know what I'm saying? I just got to push through it. You know, like I said before, you know, people might argue I'm not ready for this because of the different styles, but I'd argue they're not ready for me because I'm a pretty unique competitor in and of myself, you know?
Again, everyone, that's November 20th, Invictus Pro triple threat match for the social media championship. The champion, Big Game Leroy versus Pancakes and Mr. Ground. Now let's talk about your pro wrestling overall. Tell us how you got involved in pro wrestling and what was your earliest memory of pro wrestling?
My earliest memory, like that's I always say I remember being a little kid, probably 4 or 5 years old, and I was channel flicking, I guess, not really sure. I think I was probably looking for cartoons or something, and I came across an episode of Raw, I believe, and The Rock was in the ring cutting a promo, talking the way only he can, and I was mesmerized. I found it so entertaining. I can't tell you to this day what he said, but it resonated with me. I thought it was funny. I thought it was great, and I stayed on that channel for the rest of the episode. And then as I got older, I grew up watching like SmackDown on UPN and Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero, Kurt Angle, John Cena later, Edge, Lesnar, all those guys. It made me really, really go like, oh, this wrestling thing is so, so cool. Especially the cruiserweights, especially the tag team matches. Like that was the stuff that I was really into as a kid. These guys flying around the ring with the greatest of ease. These guys, doing things that you don't usually think humans can do. And that was kind of what took me into pro wrestling. And as I got older, I joked that I never really believed I could be a pro wrestler. I always thought it'd be really cool if I could, but it's very understanding that I was a very short, lanky, skinny kid growing up, not much height to me, not much size to me, and that pro wrestling might not be for me. But I always thought to myself, it's worth giving a shot. Like in life, I always tell everybody, no matter what your dream is, you got to give it a shot before you could say, nah, I can't do that, because then you're left with regrets. And I thought to myself, I don't want to be like 29 thinking to myself, dang, what if I tried to be a pro wrestler and trained and stuff? So when I was 17 years old, I graduated high school. As soon as I did that, I made a beeline for the nearest wrestling school. I live in Brooklyn, New York, so the nearest one actually was House of Glory Pro Wrestling, ran by Brian Excel and Amazing Red, and I haven't looked back since then. And it's been a really awesome journey, been a really long and grueling journey, because that was 2014. So next year that'll be 8 years in wrestling that I've been in, and I'm still a pretty young kid in wrestling. I'm 25, but I've always felt like the amount of years I've been in this has kind of given me a really awesome perspective, especially as a young person, kind of like breaking in and kind of just not really knowing much of anything in life. Like I was wrestling before I could even like party or go anywhere or go into a bar. I was at wrestling shows and on the road traveling, just off of wrestling. The first time I ever hopped in a plane was for wrestling. The first time I traveled across different states really as an adult was because of wrestling. And a lot of it is kind of all I know and kind of all I want to know, if that makes sense.
So, being kind of hesitant at the beginning to get into wrestling, at what point did you realize I'm doing this, and where you felt like you were really clicking and that you knew you made the right choice?
So the point, so when I was the point where I knew I had to be a pro wrestler was actually when I was 14. I was watching at that time it was 2011, and the Summer of Punk was happening in WWE, and I thought, wow, this is really, really cool. Like beyond anything that I had been watching, and I was always a fan of wrestling, and a lot of my friends had grown out of it, but I remember them being immediately like, yo, so is that CM Punk thing like real? Is he really leaving WWE? Is he really stealing the title and running off wherever? Did he really just run up on Triple H at Comic-Con? Like I remember everybody was talking about wrestling, and I thought to myself, man, I would really love to be able to make people feel that feeling all the time, because I would really love for people to see what I see in wrestling all the time, not just when it's a really, really cool thing happening, but just like in general. So my feeling was like, okay, I got to try this. I really got to try this. And so then, fast forward later, as I was training and traveling and stuff like that and doing the things, I was there were certain things that came to me easier my first few months in training, certain things that I felt kind of came naturally, I should say. And that stuff was cool, but I just enjoyed the grueling work. Like earlier on, my footwork in wrestling wasn't the greatest. I was a smaller dude in a ring with a lot of bigger dudes, and building that strength up to like be able to like just lift a guy up for a body slam or lift a guy up for a vertical suplex, like that stuff. Going to my college gym in between classes to try to put on any type of frame of muscle and trying to get stronger. Like that's the stuff that I really liked. And I was like, I like improving. I like grinding. I enjoy the long term improvement and trying to get better and trying to whatever, like wrestling is a super glamorous thing that people just think, oh, it's super cool in theory, but like there's so much bitter work that goes into it. And like I kind of fell in love with the bitterness of the work. I fell in love with the training and I fell in love with all of that. My first 2 years in wrestling, my wrestling school was open every Tuesday and Thursday, and I just never missed a Tuesday and Thursday, and then if there's ever extra days, I was like, to jump in there. So I think like at least my first 3-4 months in, by then I was like, yeah, I'm meant to do this. I have to do this.
So look at your character right now. In the world of professional wrestling, as we speak, there are a lot of very unique characters. Orange Cassidy, Dexter Loomis, and then there's Big Game Leroy, who I'm going to go out on a limb here and say it's probably you turned up to about 12. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely. I think that that's always the best wrestlers and the most relatable characters, because you go, oh, that's that. I could tell like that comes from a real place. And I'm guilty as charged. I'm a huge video game fan. I'm a huge nerd. I'm literally wearing a My Hero Academia shirt right now. This is who I am. This is what I do. It's not something that I just went, golly gee, it's gonna be a great idea to be that. That would be very fake. That would be very disingenuous, and I would be like more so acting than I would be like feeling and giving something someone can resonate to. So, I grew up a big gamer. Like the biggest things when I was a kid was video games and wrestling. So when I got older, I was like, oh, maybe I can kind of incorporate some of that. At first it was very basic. It was very like, yeah, I'll just wear Nintendo gear or come out to the ring in like a cool gamer t-shirt or whatever. And if a fan appreciates it or doesn't know where it's from, at least, maybe I made one new fan or one person who goes, hey, that's kind of cool or whatever. And then it snowballed because it was like, okay, how can I incorporate more of this? How can I stand out? Because I love to say this quote of I'm not the first video game wrestler, like I'm probably like the 8th or 9th at this point. You think of Kenny Omega, you think of TJP, you think of ACH, you think of I'm stumping, but I'm sure you guys probably could think of a bunch of other video game wrestlers like Riley Shepard.
Even Xavier Woods is basically a video game wrestler.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
Yeah, exactly. And then like everybody's a gamer in wrestling, it feels like. So it's like, how can I stand out from that? It can't just be the gear, it can't just be the attire. I remember essentially the idea of how Big Game Leroy came to be was I was on a road trip with some of my buddies, and it was an intergender wrestling match for the first time, and I was wrestling this much smaller woman, and I had no idea how this was gonna go, because she was still supposed to be the bad guy or bad person or the healer or whatever, and I'm just like, okay, I don't really know how this is gonna go well, because I don't really know how this should go, and I'm trying to stand out. It's my first time wrestling in this company or whatever, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. And then my friends make the joke, because I'm playing my Switch on the road trip over there. They're like, well, what if you just didn't stop playing your Switch? And I was like, oh yeah, I could come out with it and stuff like that. And that's very on the nose, very literal. They're like, no, but what if you just kept doing it? And I was like, what if I did just kind of keep doing it? What if I did kind of just went in the ring? What can I do with no hands? What can I do with a video game in my hand? And I thought of a little kick combo. I thought of like a little like leg sweep and a senton, and the 20 people in the crowd that show really kind of dug it. So I was like, okay, there might be something here. And, it was a little bit of touch and go, but after a while, I was kind of like, oh, the reactions are getting more and more positive. And I kept building to it. And then eventually got to the point where I was like, wow, I think that I got something going here. And just took off from there.
So is it hard to keep your concentration in the ring, with everything that's going on? It's just in a normal match layout scenario, but now you're also playing your video game during the match.
Yeah. I mean, I like to think of it a little, I just said it a little bit earlier, but I'm the master of multitasking. There's no doubt that in the ring I'm as legit as they come, and on the sticks I'm as legit as they come. So why not both? And if my opponent, the thing I like to think of is if my opponent's a little thrown off by that, I use that to my advantage. I think a lot of times you're in there, you're ready for a guy to wrestle you as hard as they can. But when you see this one guy with a switch in his hands, you're not entirely sure if he's it's for real or not. Boom, that's when you catch them off guard, and that's when you got them lying on their back and looking up at the lights. So I look at it a little bit as a mental mind game. I look at it a little bit as a fun thing. I look at it in a lot of different ways. My focus and my concentration is on the game, but it's also on winning, both the game and the match, actually.
Now, do you find that a lot of times your ideas come from just kind of random things, or do you like go and search for um, different avenues of entertainment to maybe help spark ideas for what you want to do in the future?
Oh, absolutely. I think you hit it right on the head with the latter thing. Like, I definitely get inspired. I think everybody gets inspired by wrestling. Like, obviously, wrestlers are inspired by good wrestling. Like older wrestling, the stuff you grew up on or whatever. For me, it's not just wrestling. Like, I get inspired by anime, video games, obviously, cartoons, movies, comic books, regular books. I find inspiration kind of anywhere I need to. I remember literally watching the Goku and Cooler fight from the Dragon Ball Z movie, and I found inspiration for wrestling right then and there. And I'm very like you go through my YouTube playlist history. It's really just a bunch of anime motivational stuff and clips and highlights of action movies, and that's where a lot of my inspiration comes from. Whether it be like a really cool motivational quote that I'm kind of like, hey, maybe I can sprinkle that into my next promo or next video or whatever, or seeing a really cool video game graphic or effect, and I'm like, hey, maybe I can squeeze that in, or maybe I can make that a merch idea, or maybe I can make that a background or a graphic. And it just never stops. And I think that it's always fun because I don't just take from one thing. I get my inspiration from a bunch of different spots and different places. So it keeps things fresh. And then at the same time, I sometimes just sit down and I just try to think of as unique things as I can as possible. Obviously, I believe that wrestling is art. I believe that what I do is art, and I believe that I go through an artistic process of okay, what can I do here, or hey, where can I do this and that, and sometimes they just come from the feelings and things that I'm going through, and then I just go from there.
Now, your world of professional wrestling has taken you down many avenues, including a trip down to Florida to wrestle for AEW. Tell
Yes,
us
yes,
about that
yes.
experience and how did that come about?
It was, well, I tell people like that was probably the best wrestling experience I've had in my life, and I think that most people could understand that. It's definitely high up there and stuff. Um, the experience was pretty much it was very interesting because it happened in the height of the pandemic, at least in the New York Northeast area. Because I was helping my friend's private party with a lot of the some BTE episodes, being the elite. And I got to get some cameos, kind of do some stuff in it. A lot of fun. And at the same time, there were some openings for Dark. As we could probably know, there's a lot of AEW Dark during the pandemic was a lot of opportunities given to independent wrestlers, and things kind of fell into place. The openings were there. Some good word was put in for me. Big shout outs to Private Party, of course, and it just went from there. And of course, being in the height of the pandemic, I had my own concerns, but it was really, really cool because they took complete care of me. There was COVID testing there, which, again, my first COVID test, because at this time there was just no COVID testing, came from AEW. This is one of those things where I'm just kind of like, oh yeah, wrestling did that for me. Like the first time I got a COVID test was at AEW because of wrestling, and they took care of us. And it's so crazy to me because the way that they like look out for local guys, or I guess that's what you would call me, or unsigned independent talent. They fed us, they took care of us. There were so many guys were asking how we were doing, checking in on us, giving us advice, just talking and chatting it up. And like, man, like it's awesome. It was such a great learning experience. It was such a great positive experience. And the hope is to go back one day, but at the same time, it motivates you to do even better once you get back to the independents. And at the time I hadn't wrestled in like, I want to say like 3 months. So, like it was very inspiring because it was like, okay, even if it's another 3 months before I wrestle again, I can't stop because this has got to, this inspiration, this feeling in my heart, it ain't going to go away anytime soon. And I got to use it or else I'm going to lose it.
So, what was some of the best advice you got while you were down there?
Um, like I know I got a lot of different advice. I got some really good advice from Luther, which was like which is kind of, I don't know, it gets a little interesting, because um Luther, but he was just like, there's gonna be people who say like you did this or you were in dark and all you did was that or all you've done is this or that or whatever. But there are wrestlers who would kill to be in your position. There are wrestlers who would kill just to be you right now. You need to soak it in, be grateful, and just focus on that positivity and that feeling. Don't worry about what you could have done. Don't worry about so much what you messed up on. That stuff will get corrected in time. Hold on to the positivity. That was really good advice. I know that I know Alex Reynolds gave me some pretty good advice. I'd wrestled him a few times on the independents before he even got signed. So that was really, really cool to kind of like get more of that. Um, the Revival spent an enormous amount of time talking to me and some of the other independent guys, and I think that was really, 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 really cool. Just other things, guys like Taz, Cole Cabana, those guys also gave some pretty cool advice. But I think the thing with Luther really resonated the most for me, to be very honest. Mostly because like it wasn't necessarily in-ring advice, like, hey, clench your fist like that or something. It was just more about the emotions and the feelings and how processing and how to move forward, because wrestling is just as grueling emotionally as it is physically. I think that we're learning that more and more every day as the industry starts to like kind of open up and people get to see more and more. We just saw Eddie Kingston releasing the Players Tribune, this whole story about his upbringing that just, you read it and it's insane, like it's really, really powerful, the journey to here, not just physically and the pain and the bumps and bruises, but like the emotional journey. And I think Luther understood that, and he, just looking out for some of the younger guys, and always appreciate that. Always appreciate him for that.
How was it like sharing a locker room with some talents that growing up were a big fan of? Did you become a fanboy at any point, being around some of them, or did you kind of keep it kind of cool?
It's so interesting. Like, so yeah, there's some people who like I do get like a little like nervous around, or I'm just like, oh my gosh, wow, this is wild. Like I'm in the same room as the Young Bucks was, like for me, the Young Bucks as a teenager, I thought the Young Bucks are like the coolest wrestlers in the world. And, it was really cool to like have like a Nick Jackson come up to you and go like, hey, thanks, man, for the BTE stuff. Like you guys have been killing it. And I'm just like, I used to watch BTE on my in between college classes, so like to even be on it and then to be congratulated by the guys making it is nuts. My friends like to joke that I get tongue tied around Kenny Omega. Me and him have not properly like had a conversation or anything, so that's why I'm just like, that's not even fair to say, but I whatever, get a little nervous. Matt Hardy, really, really cool. Like I grew up a Hardy boy, a Hardy fan, so like getting to see Matt Hardy at any point is really, really cool. But at the same time, it's like, thanks to my wrestling school, I got to meet a lot of really awesome wrestlers at a young age. Like House of Glory would bring in these, the superstar talents back in the day. So like, be a star of the month, like Ricochet, before he got signed. AJ Styles, when he was still doing his New Japan stuff. Rey Mysterio, who was my hero growing up. I got to meet him in 2015, and take a picture of him and stuff. And like, that's really cool. Samoa Joe, I got to do a seminar with him in 2015, right before he signed with WWE. Cody Rhodes, I had met him in a seminar in 2016. So, seeing him again all these years later, it's still cool. Don't get it twisted. It's still really cool, but it's like, it's not as much of a fanboy, crazy moment, because it's like, this is what I've been doing, meeting them when I'm 18 versus meeting them now at 24, 25. It's like, it doesn't hit the same, but it's always still surreal, and it still always is surreal, because like I'll lay my head in my pillow and be like, that's pretty nuts that like I was just shaking all these people's hands who I grew up watching as a teenager and as a kid, and they see me as just another wrestler, and like I'm one of them. And that's always awesome.
Go ahead, Tom.
So I'm probably the opposite. So like I could go like Mick Foley or whoever. I've met Mick Foley like 4 times, and every time I'm still just as nervous because he was it for me. But I think that's really cool, and I'm sure it helps the more you're around these people and you kind of get comfortable, and then you become. I would assume you feel like you're just one of them. Is that true? Do you feel like the more you're in these locker rooms that you feel more and more a part of where they're at, even though you're in locker rooms with people who have been on TV for 25 years. But do you find yourself getting more and more at that point where you feel like one of them?
Yeah, I would say so. Like I think the past 2-ish, 3 years, I've really gotten like to a level of confidence. I would use that word because an ego in wrestling is very like it's a slippery slope, but I will say confidence of that I can hold my own with anyone. That just that I can hold my own with anyone at the bare minimum. And I have rarely felt like, oh yeah, like dang, I could not hold my like I couldn't carry my own weight in this matchup or whatever, or I couldn't keep up, I couldn't hang. I actually can't even think of a moment like where like I've had mess ups and stuff like that, but I've never had a moment where like, oh, I just couldn't even like that guy was on another level kind of thing. I feel pretty confident about stuff like that. I think my mind for wrestling is pretty solid, and the more that I get to like elevate my career and wrestle, bigger names and more talented individuals and just grind and wrestle in front of different crowds and different people, the more I kind of learned that like, oh yeah, I have a really good knack and a really good mind for all of this. For me to wrestle a Danhausen literally like about a month ago, and to me, he's one of the best wrestlers in the country, and like I'm just kind of like that dude is really, really, really talented, and like who knows like what he's gonna think of me, and then I get in the ring with him, and I'm like it's like magic. We're going back and forth, back and forth. It's going like awesome, and like it just kind of bleeds into each other, and we tell a really awesome story in the ring, and the crowd is kind of split behind us. It's really really fun. It's really awesome, and that stuff only builds to your confidence. You go from good thinking, well, I just want to be a part of this, to realizing, oh, I am a part of this. I have a role. I have a niche, and now it's just a matter of how do I elevate? How do I continue to use the platform I've earned or been given and continue to do good with it? How do I, because at the end of the day, you just want to do right by people. You just want to tell really awesome stories and entertain, make people happy, and do some good with the art that you're creating. And that's my end goals. I always just wanted to make wrestling cooler to people who aren't necessarily wrestling fans, and make wrestling fans who might not feel like they have like a place in wrestling, give them a home in it, and that's always been my end goals, and that's always been my focus. And like, if I can make some nerdy kid feel more in line and in tune with wrestling and feel comfortable in the scene, then I think I've done a good thing.
Awesome. Well, Leroy, but before we let you go tonight, tell everyone where they can find you on social media. Here's your chance to plug your merch, anything that you need to plug. Here we go.
Okay. I am Big Game Leroy, and you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Big Game Leroy. Easy to spell, easy to find. You can add me on Facebook because Mark Zuckerberg refuses to let me change my name to Big Game. You can add me on Facebook at Leroy Green, or you could just, follow me on there and, see my updates and stuff like that. But do people really use Facebook? I don't know. We'll see. You guys can also buy my merchandise, prowrestlingtees.com/buy Big Game Leroy. Because if you spend enough money, you can, in fact, buy Big Game Leroy. And then also you can find more merch of mine at phillygimmicked.com/Big Game Leroy. I have games, literal games for sale. NES cartridges, Tiger Electronics, custom design. You can use them as a memorabilia item, throw them in a trophy case, make it a cool Instagram post, or you can literally plug it in and play. You throw in some batteries, dust off your NES, plop it in. So much fun. So you can add me on those. You can follow me there. Please support, because games are expensive and Big Game Leroy needs his games.
That may be the best plug we've ever had on here.
Yeah.
Ever. Absolutely. Great. Don't forget, everyone, November 20th, triple threat match. Victus Pro Overdrive. It's Big Game Leroy versus Pancakes versus Mr. Graham for the Social Media Championship. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We greatly appreciate it. For everyone out there, make sure you are doing what you need to do. Stay safe so you can go watch Leroy retain his title November 20th. Make sure you all also pick up a copy of my book, Independent Road to Wrestler's Journey. And of course, the new book, Loving Casey Nelson, Barnes & Noble's number 35 on the bestsellers for kids right now. Appreciate all the support that you all always give me in time. Make sure y'all hit the subscribe button. Thank y'all and have a good night.